I hereby call to order this meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee on March 1st, 2023 at 7 p.m. I am Linda Lukowski, Chair of the School Committee. I want to welcome everyone here tonight. A reminder that this meeting is being audio and video recorded, and we do have two members of the committee that are remote. So, Erin, can you hear us?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Susanna, can you hear us?
I'm here and I can hear you.
And all of our votes will be done by a roll call vote. I'm going to read our vision statement. We are a community of learners known for our unwavering commitment to the meeting of the needs of all students. Through the adoption of best practices and our active partnership with families and the wider community who are united in supporting the development of engaged, successful, responsible, resilient learners. Students will be well prepared to be ethical, empathetic, and contributing citizens. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. The next item is the FY24 budget hearing. Can I have a motion to open the fiscal year 2024 school budget public hearing?
Make that motion. Second?
Any discussion? So we have to have a roll call vote. Paul Lees,
Yes.
Paul Mayette,
Yes.
Paul Goldner,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Erin,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Narissa.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. The public hearing for the fiscal year 2024 school budget is now open. I'm going to read the guidance for the hearing and then turn it over to the administration for a quick review of the budget. The committee will not engage in a discussion about the budget with those commenting, but allow for any and all school and community members to provide feedback on the FY24 tentative spending budget plan. The committee will discuss the feedback provided at this public hearing following the hearing being closed at this meeting, and also again on Wednesday, March 8th, prior to finalizing the FY24 budget on March 15th, 2023. So the guidance for citizens wishing to make comments on the FY24 tentative budget: residents and parents, guardians of students attending school, the district schools through school choice are invited to address the committee on the FY23 tentative budget. Comment should last for no more than 3 minutes. Speakers who have brought a prepared statement are requested to hand it to the committee secretary as part of the public record. That will be Nicole here to my right. The school committee will review all comments and suggestions before approving the final budget on March 15th, 2023. So now we have to go.
That's after.
Yep.
To the end. I'm gonna look at those guys. Providing a brief review of the budget, like you usually do.
I'll give a brief walkthrough.
5 minutes.
5? Okay. So the tentative operating budget that was attached to the agenda details, actually I'll move to page 3 of the document, which gives a nice summary of all of the changes between the FY23 final adjusted budget and the FY24 budget. Looking at the groupings there at the top is the total salary proposed salary changes of 1.4 million. Included in that figure is 1.2 million for steps and COLAs for all employees. It's important to highlight here that we are still in active negotiations with 2 of our collective bargaining groups, so there are estimates built into that figure. The other two items 2 and 3 are pretty straightforward. The school choice receiving shortfall, item number 4 there, is due to fluctuations between, typically we like to see a balance between the number of students choicing into the district and choicing out of the district. Unfortunately, that balance has gone out of equilibrium, which is why you see that $150,000 figure there. Benefit charges, total benefit changes there are $460,000. The medical and dental insurance of $210,000 is going to represent a rate renewal of 4.01% on all medical plans. This document here shows an assumed 0% increase to all dental premium costs. That at the point in time when this document was put together, we hadn't yet received that final renewal. We have since then received a notification of a 6% reduction in our dental rates, so that'll be reflected in budget iterations going forward. The third section there, programming changes, we can see student services, contracted services, $144,800 worth of savings. Those savings are going to be recognized because we ultimately want to shift positions that were previously outsourced to private vendors back to the district to full-time positions. So that's why we have that figure reflected there. Special ed summer programming up $106,000. That's going to be to match the expenditure levels over the last 2 years, where because of increased student needs, we've had to up the staffing levels at that extended school year program. Touching upon the larger items here, special ed transportation, even though there was a large increase in our costs, luckily with the Student Opportunity Act, there's been a phase-in of a circuit breaker reimbursement where the state is partially funding those special education costs. General transportation, even though this is a small number, it's a big item. We're reflecting in this document a $4,500 savings, and that's due to an increase in rates that's in accordance with our contract. It's 2.5%. But then offsetting that, we had in this iteration removed a one-tier elementary run, so the net of those two is $4,500. Worth highlighting that we still, as a district, have 5 bus runs that are currently not non-operational. Substitute teaching up $100,000 because to match expenditure levels over the last few years. This is due to an increase in rate to stay competitive in our local area, as well as an increase in the number of sick days staff have been taking. District-wide curriculum and instruction, the description there, I think it talks in detail about the licenses, materials, and new curriculums that we want to maintain, curriculum that we've implemented in past years, but the supplies and consumables associated with that programming. I'll jump to the second page of that itemization. Total operation changes is showing a decrease of $396,000. That's somewhat masked by the reduction of $500,000 that's shown on line 20 for an E&D funded stabilization transfer. That stabilization fund transfer was in FY23, not repeated in FY24, so you see that reduction there. In terms of our utility rates, we are level. We have our rates locked in through FY24. However, there's a $60,000 increase for our district-wide field maintenance, grounds maintenance contract. And then, let's see, not included in here, which I do want to highlight, I might have skipped over it, is our special education out-of-district tuitions line item. There's actually a projected $900,000 increase in costs associated with out-of-district programming. However, because of the variability of that particular line item, students moving into the district that are moving into Triton communities that are already placed in out-of-district school placements, the costs can shift astronomically. We are fortunate to have built up our reserves over the last 2 years, specifically to be used for this purpose. So as part of this budget proposal, we level funded that out-of-district tuitions line item so that the communities wouldn't be impacted. Last, I'll jump into the new strategic spending. Line 21 has $75,000 for a stabilization fund transfer. If you remember, we had in FY23 appropriated $1.5 million over to the stabilization fund, a combination there of $1 million of general funds that were backfilled through ESSER. There were some mechanics and some accounting there. Ultimately, that $1 million of it came from ESSER, $500,000 from E&D. We're proposing that as for FY24, $75,000 be moved over there into stabilization. That's in accordance with our financial reserve policy that the committee adopted last year. So we want to make sure year one, we're starting off at the right position and not just stopping this at a standstill before it ever started. $50,000 for a continuation of the Chromebook plan, a one-to-one there where previously the one-to-one Chromebooks were exclusively funded through ESSER. We are now doing a phased approach of $50,000 a year to build that structurally into the general operating budget. And then a couple, let's see, the other items there for new strategic spending are pretty self-explanatory. So all in, we have a total operating increase of $2.1 million that's proposed as part of the tentative budget. Would you like me to jump into that tentative budget assessments document? Is that helpful, or that was after the fact? Yeah. So let's see, this document here details, it was a subsequent iteration of the revenue and assessment summary page. So prior, when the tentative budget was put forward, we hadn't yet received the minimum local contributions informations from the state as well as state revenue sources. So we had excluded that from this document. We now have received those amounts as well as the enrollment figures from which the assessments are allocated to the 3-member communities. So looking at the first page of this this PDF or this document here, you can see that it reflects, starting at the top, total operating expenses increase of $2.1 million, $2,116,618. And then we have funding sources in the general operating budget offsetting those. We have some assumed increases there. And then a net general operating assessment to the member communities of $39.7 million. That reflects an increase of $2,497,898 over FY23. And then the 3 blocks below that detail out the operating assessment, capital assessment, and total assessment. Not getting too much into the weeds here, but page 2 of this 4-page document details out the minimum local contributions of each community and how the assessments are allocated to each of the 3 communities. Page 3 of the document details out an allocation of the capital assessment. We're still paying debt on the stadium project, totaling $266,000 annually. However, that debt service is offset by $90,000 of E&D. That's in accordance with the funding policy for that project. So page 3 again details the allocation of $176,000 of capital assessments to the 3 communities. And then finally, page 4 of the document details the foundation enrollment, where at the top you can see a total of 2,224 students in the district, or foundation enrollment includes more than just students here in our 3 elementary schools, middle school and high school. There's also other factors. These are the total students each community is responsible for, whether they're choicing out of the district or a variety of other arrangements. And then we give a comparative there of the current year and past 4 years, so a total of 5 years worth of history showing the community percentages and the changes in those percentages. That may have been slightly more than 5 minutes, but I tried my best.
See, the only other thing to clarify is back at the top where it shows an increase of $2.1 million. That's actually roughly 2.6 million, because again, that 500,000 that we added in out of E&D in the adjusted FY23 and are moving that over as one-time funds. It would have been nicer to not show that, so it would have reflected more cleanly, but obviously the way that Kyle has, it's the only way we can reflect it, because that is the current budget, but it's showing a 4.43% increase. The increase in spending is roughly 5.5% if you take those figures out, for lack of a better way of saying that.
Okay, we will move on to the public hearing. And anybody who comes up to the mic, if you can state your name and the town that you're from. Would anybody like to?
Hi, my name is Lily Robata Smith, and I'm a sixth grader at Newberry Elementary School.
Hi, my name is Zoe Jansen, and I'm a sixth grader at Pine Grove. We are here today to talk about the middle school library situation. We know that there used to be a library, but now that's not available anymore.
There are a lot of people, including ourselves, that love books and visiting a school library. At the elementary schools, we can go to our library to check out books.
Our mom says that there is something in the budget to bring back a staff member to run the library. Although this is great news, we know that there aren't many books in the library and wonder if that's something that the budget will also provide.
After talking to some teachers, including our moms, we heard there might be another option. We know that bringing a library back would take a lot of time and money, so for now we can use
The high school library. The middle school and high school already share the cafeteria, the gym, the auditorium, and the band room. So why can't we share the library too?
For the teachers, they would have more space in their classrooms because all the books would be stored in the library. For the students, they would have access to more books. We have parents that bring us to our town library to buy us books, but we know not all kids have that available to them, and they should be able to at least get books from their school library.
Although we hope that eventually, hopefully before we move on to high school, there is a middle school library with tons of books for us to borrow and a smaller space to get work done in a quieter setting. But for now, access to the high school library would be great. Thank you for your time. We hope you consider what we have said. Thank you.
Thank you, girls. Nicely done. Anybody else?
Thank you. Jim Moran on Elm Street. I have a lot in my mind, but I'm going to keep it to one question, and the question is, why is a total budget, including all revenues and all expenses, not provided? I've had this discussion with Brian for the last couple of years, and what I'm getting to is your audit shows you have expenditures of over $66 million, and here you have a budget for $48 million. For those who only have one piece of paper in hand, you would expect the school is only spending less than $50 million when it's really spending over 60. I think it's reasonable, and I understand Brian's point. I believe it could be made a supplement to the budget. I think it would be help the credibility of the school committee and maybe get into some detail of the explanation. The numbers don't have to be difficult. If they're laid out in spreadsheets, most people who are interested can figure it out. But that's my input for that issue, and I guess I'll get into the second question. I understand I was watching the October meeting last year where it was made clear that the school was underperforming the state standards. And my question was, what actions are being taken to mitigate and solve that problem to get us not only up to, but maybe ahead of and above the state standards? Are there any answers, or would you be discussing this openly now after this hearing is closed?
We'll be discussing the budget, yes.
You will be. So you may be addressing these. It's, I guess I'm looking for some answers, and if there's going to be no answers, I might as well pack it up and head back to the house. Kyle was going to get me some dessert here, but I don't think he brought the chocolate cake or the coffee, so maybe it's in the cafeteria waiting for me. I'm not clear. Will there be any answers maybe forthcoming?
It'll be up to the committee what they want to discuss for the,
Okay. Thank you very much. I guess the last thing, it's important. I want to thank you for your commitment to the education of the children of the district. It's at times I probably feel it's a thankless commitment, but you know better than that. Stay the course, even though there's many difficulties along. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Moran. Would anybody else like to address the committee? Seeing no one, can I have a motion to close the fiscal year 2024 school budget public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the fiscal 2024 school budget public hearing. Second?
Any discussion? We need a roll call vote. Paul Lees?
Yes.
Paul Mayette?
Yes.
Paul Goldner?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Marissa?
Yes?
Susanna?
Yes.
Erin?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. The FY 2024, so we're going to go on to the Kids Club update.
So we certainly can, I talk all the time. Anna, why don't you talk about this? Want to talk about this?
I'd be happy to talk about this.
Excellent.
So at, I believe, the February meeting, the school committee approved new rates for Kids Club for before and after school programming. And those rates outlined 3 different options, which were mirroring the programming that we use for pre-K, where we'd have a 2-day-a-week option of Tuesday, Thursday, and a 3-day-a-week option of Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We received a large amount of feedback from families that, and we wanted to sort of respond to that feedback and recommend an adjustment to that structure that would better accommodate their needs. So although the rates would stay the same, we would allow for some flexibility so that there could be any combination of 2 days a week, 3 days a week, or 4 days a week. So rather than being held to a Tuesday, Thursday slot, a family could elect to have a Thursday, Friday spot. It does make staffing more challenging, which is what we were trying to avoid in the original proposal, but we're now recommending we put that back in and think that we can move forward with that. Yes.
I know one of the comments made in the previous conversation was that these changes would hopefully kind of alleviate the wait list. Do we still believe in that this is not kind of providing the hiring incentives that we were hoping it would, that we'll still be able to hire enough staff to significantly reduce or eliminate that wait list?
My hope is that, yes, I don't know for sure if this change in structure would have an impact on that wait list or not. We are shifting to a more centralized and online registration process, which will allow us to sort of have very clear timestamps and days, and just so that centrally I'll be able to say, when you ask the question, how many people are on the wait list, I will have that answer in 10 seconds and be able to. So we're definitely doing some work in being more consistent across programming in all the 3 schools, and that is one change that we're making, is centralizing that process. My understanding is at this point, though, that all families that have expressed interest to be part of the Kids Club have some days at Kids Club. That's my latest understanding from the coordinators.
Okay, thank you. And hopefully when we get the centralized system, we can have, because I think that, I don't know if that means they asked for 4 and got 1, and they're still missing 3. Like, it doesn't really give us a good idea, I think, of what still needs fulfillment out there. So, I would just say, definitely heard from parents myself on this. I definitely understand the need. I still have concerns about the wait list, but I understand that hiring right now is very difficult as it is, so.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for Anna? Okay, can I have a motion to approve a slight modification to the Kids Club rates and structure for 2023-2024 as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Any discussion?
Yeah, you need a second? I'll second it.
Second.
Any discussion? We'll need a roll call vote. Paul Lees,
Yes.
Paul Mayette,
Yes.
Paul Goldner,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Narissa,
Yes?
Susanna,
Yes.
Erin,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. So moving on to the FY '24 budget discussion. With the delay in the governor's budget, we as a school committee have had limited meetings in which to discuss the school budget within the context of these numbers. I wanted to leave a spot on the agenda tonight to provide additional opportunity for discussion, so I would like to open the floor for that now.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to whatever, look at you, but I'm assuming based on the fact that there's a document attached, that we're going to go through that before we have a discussion. I'm assuming there's some explanation that goes with it.
Yes. So there is a document attached. So as Narissa noted, this year's process has been more condensed. And so given that we normally, even though we would normally have a public hearing tonight, we usually have that. You then have a week to discuss and give guidance. We have that, but I feel like, you know, we had been talking about a high water mark that was very high, and we didn't have state figures that gave us the information that Kyle shared a while ago until last week. So the governor did just publish her budget today. And so we now have the information. We have a little bit more backstory on what her priorities are. $10 million of the billion new is going to K through 12, pre-K through 12 education, so that's certainly concerning. So the big story, obviously, Narissa and Paul and I and Kyle were at the Rowley Select Board meeting on Monday. Certainly, as Kyle mentioned, the roughly 2.5, just shy of $2.5 million increase, as we were looking through the possible scenarios, we were thinking, we knew Rowley's enrollment went up. The early projections were it would be about $1 million for Salisbury, about $1 million for Rowley, about $500,000 for Newbury. Obviously, you now know it's close to $1.2 million for Rowley, which is a significant figure. So we talked through that with the select board on Monday night. It is not, it's a structural problem. The reality is Rowley became 1.25% more of the district for next year than they are this year. That's a significant shift. So they're taking 1.25% more of the total piece of the pie. That's a combination of that increased enrollment as well as property growth, the calculations that the state puts forward as far as the amount, the minimum local contribution that they're required to spend. So you have the requirement to approve a budget that you feel like meets the needs of the students and aligns with what the towns can provide. So we are going to have our discussions with the District Communications Committee again tomorrow night, 6:30, Salisbury Town Hall, Colchester Room, don't miss it. But what we wanted to do is start to give you some scenarios about some potential what-ifs. So Kyle put this information together to show what how we can reduce the budget, and again, not starting to talk about individual cuts, but to take you through this again, the increase on the first page shows $2.497 million, again, just shy of $2.5 million. And then there are 3 scenarios laid out. The green column are items that we believe we can adjust now and say, we are proposing this, right? These are things that have adjusted revenues, expenditures that we feel confident changing. So going through the list, we're saving about $25,000 for choice tuitions. We know that, that's now documented. We're confident assuming that. Nothing on regular day transportation in this scenario. They stay the same. All 5 of those runs that are currently not running now, we will run them again someday. This actually, all 3 of these scenarios add in the library assistant that was proposed by Al McCray, the middle school principal. I know Anna has been having lots of conversations with high school staff, actually middle school and high school, in working through what that could look like. But the reality is we do need a person to staff the library at the middle school in order to offer the same services that we do at the elementary and at the high school level. So to find representatives here tonight suggesting that we share the high school library, there is possibility there, certainly. But the reality is we need that resource in the middle school and accessible on a routine basis. So this puts that back to where it had been previously, and it's still just an assistant, not a librarian, but it allows the operation of that library in partnership with the librarian here.
So can you just talk about that real quick? Because I believe before it was a part-time IA that was in there, and I'm guessing that, I don't know if this is the same thing, and does this involve actually having, is it access to the library during another class or during a free period, or is this an actual library assigned time?
So I think that is yet to be determined. Is that a fair? You want to speak to that?
Sure. We actually have a group coming together next week of high school library media specialists, middle school principal, middle school reading specialist, assistant principal, to kind of put our heads together and say, like, this is a problem we know we have to solve, and what's the best way to do it. So already people are kicking around some ideas, but the group's coming together to kind of not finalize, but really document something next week.
So this assumes a full-time IA, and I actually had the discussion with Anna, I think that was yesterday. That's the most we would need to fulfill that role, and it may be as time moves on, and speaking with the reading specialist, that there's a different use, that it's not just classes coming in where it need to be staffed all day. So TBD, but this puts that resource there. And unfortunately, I mean, the reason why it's not there is because it was taken for a need for providing special education services. So as quickly as we put it in, it could be needed for other things, but that is the intention.
Okay, and I just want to clarify from the statement that was made earlier tonight, this will not include new materials, but my understanding is we have not typically funded new materials in the operating budget either. It's been, at least at the elementary level, it's been from outside sources, and that could potentially be deployed at the middle school as well.
Yeah, so the middle school library, a lot of the new, and they haven't had new since it's been shut down for a while, but has been acquired through book fairs, through the Scholastic book fairs, and that's the way they've kept up-to-date resources. So they haven't purchased them in years. My understanding is a number of them were kind of lost. A number of the books were lost throughout the pandemic too. I'm sure it happened everywhere. So there is a need of sort of restocking with current, but we'll work through that with that position. And just to respond, it would look different than the elementary that has it as like a special. It would not be worked into the, I don't think it would be worked into the special schedule at the middle school, but could be worked in a similar rotation where every student has access to it on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that because obviously that was the context that they were coming from. So I'm assuming they're going to watch this at some point and need all the answers they can get.
That's right.
May I ask a question on the library too?
Of course.
Is there a reason why the books are not able to be put into the high school library and accessing it with the same resource that we have in the high school to make sure that we can keep it open? Is there, just for my education, is there a reason why it was moved away from a shared library space?
You're saying, so it was never a shared space? The high school library has always been the library and the middle school library?
Well,
No?
not to date myself, but when I
Oh,
went to
okay.
school in Triton,
Okay.
we had one library. We didn't have a middle school library and a high school library, and we all went down to the library and used the resources that were down there. And I'm just curious if there's like a specific reason why we shifted away from that, and if we're struggling to make sure that we can keep it open, if there's a possibility that we can utilize space and the resources that we have allocated already in that main library as the solution.
Yes. So first of all, you're not in the room, but everyone's staring at me, wondering how I'm going to respond without commenting on your age. So, so is there an explicit reason? No. Are there traditions and things that have happened over recent years? Yes. So that is part of the discussion. I know the group that Anna's meeting with includes high school staff as well to talk through how it could be a combination of both. Is that fair?
Yeah, so we talked about this at the beginning of the year a little bit when the library materials reconsideration group came together. And that was presented as a possible idea throughout the rest of the school year. There were also some challenges that presented. So I think whatever proposals we come up with, we're going to have to weigh the benefits and the challenges that each present.
Does that answer the question, Erin?
I think so, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So continuing on there, charter school savings, again, these are numbers straight off of the recalculation. So we'll save $40,000 in our charter projection. We'll save $26,183 on our dental renewal. It actually came in, we had it at 0, it came in at minus 6.3%. So those changes total a reduction of $46,183. It's obviously actually a reduction of $91,183. We actually added that middle school library resource. And then we have assumptions for Chapter 70 aid, goes up $66,000. As we said, we had $66,000. We talked about this weeks ago. We're receiving an additional $30,000 this year. They did add that to the base. So that's helpful. It's an additional $66,000 than we assumed. If you look at Chapter 70 for anything on the state site, it will show that $66,000 increase. The difference is our assumption for fiscal '23 is $66,000 lower than the actual final number. So for us in the budget, it's doubling. According to the state, it's the $66,000. Special education transport circuit breaker, the budget fully funds that. So doing the calculation and enrolling those costs into eligible circuit breaker reimbursement, now seeing the numbers, Kyle feels confident in assuming an additional $80,000 in revenue. Regional transportation, Kyle dug into that some. The current budget shows it at a 90% reimbursement.
The state budget.
Is that what I said? The state. Yeah, the state budget assumes it around 90%. This assumes it at 85%. Things happen through the budget process. Not everyone likes regions, so we'll go with 85% for now. That gives us an additional $55,000 in revenue. And then on the Medicaid, again, Kyle's spoken a lot about this and the process and the work that our clinicians do to provide services or to provide reimbursement for services that are eligible for Medicaid. Tick that up another $25,000 for the assumption. So that's a new revenue assumption or an increased revenue assumption of $226,000. So if you take the savings of 46, the added revenue of 226, that shows the increase in the assessment to towns goes down to 2.225. So roughly 250,000, 260,000, 70,000 less. Scenarios. So let's go to the second page first in that green box. In that scenario, and again, there's no impact, that's just adjusted actual assumptions. You can see that Newbury's assessment goes down to $522,000 for an increase of 4.85%. Rowley goes down to $1,082,000 for a 9.32%. And Salisbury goes down to $620,000 for an increase of 4.2%. That is the only one in green because that's an assumption right now, right? That is, we are doing that without changing any of the other assumptions in the rest of the budget as far as level services. If we go back to the first page on scenarios 2 and 3, They're largely similar. Scenario 2 keeps the savings from choice, the library, out of the library assistant, charter, dental, and it adds in, you can see on regular day transportation, as we keep saying, there are 5 runs that are not running routinely because of driver shortage right now. This assumes that 3 of them are restored. So there are currently down 2 at Salisbury, 3 at Rowley. So it would restore 1 of the 2 at Salisbury. It would restore 2 of the 3 at Pine Grove. We believe that those can be, again, if from the beginning of the year, those are rerouted with those number of buses, it would be a very different experience than what Kyle's had to endure all year, which is short-term, in the spur of the moment, combining routes, and even routes that have been combined over the course of the year permanently. We didn't reroute the whole town, which means that there are some buses that are overloaded and not some that are underloaded. So we still feel confident that we can make that reduction and still have, they're not going to be an empty bus runs, but there would be reasonable bus runs so that we put 2 in a seat and are not loading them like we are now.
I just noticed that you specifically said Pine Grove and Salisbury. Is this just elementary runs,
Sorry.
or this would be the dual elementary and middle school, high school?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. I should say they're Newbury, or they're Rowley and Salisbury, not just Pine Grove.
Okay. All right. And you believe with the redistribution, we can kind of even out? Because I know some of those buses are very full right now.
Absolutely, yeah, and also factoring in, I think Erin made the point a couple meetings ago about families who aren't taking the bus now but may want to in the future, so I'd feel confident with those.
Okay,
That
thank
we'd be
you.
able to accommodate that.
And again, I don't think we're saying these are things we really want to do, right? This is how do we get from here to there. So that was the first area we decided is something we can do. There will be an impact, but in the grand scheme of impact, we felt comfortable with that. Second one down, second from the bottom of the list there, is shifting about 50,000 of the increase that Anna proposed to grants. There are several grants that are out there. We've received them in the past. And so we can make an assumption that we're going to get those grants. We've been relatively successful lately when we're writing grants that aren't necessarily just needs-based, when they're actually based on the quality of the application. And we have really good applications. Thank you, Anna. So that assumes that 50,000 of that, we get those grants, and 50,000 is paid through the grant and not the general fund. So that additional 136 plus 50 shows a $232,000 savings. And then same revenue increases, so that shows a bottom line increase to the towns of $2,039,000. If you go over to the next page, that gets Newbury now down to $469,000 increase, or 4.36%. Rowley still over $1 million at $1,022,000, 8.8%. And Salisbury, who's been in many years the one carrying a very large number, is sitting at $548,000 for only a 3.7% increase. And then the final scenario, the only change there, you can see on the bottom, it says undesignated cuts of $139,715. And that is a completely arbitrary number that gets us to an total increased assessment of $1.9 million. Again, certainly not recommending this to you, but to give you a sense of, if we got the cuts down to $1.9 million, even at that point, we are just barely getting Rowley under $1 million. So in years past, we've talked about the numbers when they're close and getting everyone in the comfort range. I don't think there's a scenario without doing some pretty significant decimating of programs that we get Rowley into a I don't want to use the word comfortable, right? None of these assessments are comfortable, but into the range where they've seen that in recent years. So that's what we have for you. Again, scenario 1, I think we can safely assume. So our hope tonight is to hear from you, again, about where you want to feel compelled to say to us, come back with how you would get to this figure, and then we will come back to you next week. Again, still not done, but with an actual, here's how we would get to that figure, list of changes, assumptions. And if it does need to be cuts, it wouldn't say undesignated. We would have very specific things that we're talking about there.
Does anybody have any recommendations for Brian?
Can I ask a really random question, Anna? The 50,000 in grants, does that specifically go to that we're risking?
So I had, at the time we met last, I believe 3 grant applications out. We've since received one of them, which is, I believe, 80,000, but it doesn't offset this. It has to be spent by August 30th. And so that one in particular is for the implementation of high-quality instructional materials, so it can be used for contracted services and stipends for teachers who are working on implementing ELI curriculum. I have another one outstanding. It is the high-quality instructional materials grant. We did receive it last year. That's what, I believe we got 142,000, I think, for CKLA. This year, the grant is limited to 50% of the cost of instructional resources. And there's another one about co-teaching. It's a grant for evidence-based programming, and it would support co-teaching at Salisbury Elementary. So all kind of different pieces, but together we're estimating about 50.
So that's a fairly large, could you run the same that you're running now minus that 50,000? Because I know co-teaching's been really important, and I know CKLA and fidelity to that and has been really important. When I see a risk and it's that valuable, I just want to point out that that's a pretty valuable risk. Unless I'm wrong, and then it's.
Could I just say, while it is a risk, we realign line items, categories every single year. So in that everything's earmarked now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the entire 50,000 would be coming out of something, right?
That's what I'm just trying to figure out where, because it has to come from somewhere. So if we lose, I know it says risk, so if you lose that 50,000 and we rearrange, I'm guessing 50,000 isn't magically in another line item that we don't need, because the budget so I just want to, before we say a risk and it's not listed out what that risk is, I just wanted to hear it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think the risk is that it could end up, we don't have the money at all. We could get the grant. There could be some other money that we've assumed a cost, and as to Narissa's point, it frees up and we don't need to do that thing. Or there could be another way we realize through a new grant, did I already say that? Right, a new grant opportunity that comes along. But it's absolutely risk, yeah.
Thank you, Anna.
Go ahead, Paul.
We are not running 5 routes now. I'm assuming, bus routes, I'm assuming that our kids are still getting to school. The students are still getting to school for the most part, and we're not having very large numbers of students who aren't getting to school because of the transportation issue.
Yeah, so I would say right now, we've done some reorganization with the bus routes themselves so that all bus routes are relatively the same amount of total ride times, right? So that there's that equilibrium to a degree. The biggest challenge, I think, in students not getting to school, if they don't get to school, is because we have to do a last minute combination. Somebody unfamiliar with the route is driving and they blow by a house. That said, with removing 2 bus runs here, I think I'd feel comfortable that we would the routes that are running with consistent drivers, we would have a decent experience for our students.
But what we don't know is, we know there are some parents who are choosing to drive their student rather than deal with the bus.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's really a concrete way for us to get that information. The reality is we have to route all students who would potentially ride the bus, and that fluctuates year to year. So there is the risk, right, that it's based on who's riding, it's doable now. It would still be tight. It would be tight, absolutely. It would be, we're confident it would be better than it is right now because we would be able to space them out better and actually route them more methodically.
Ed Paul?
So Brian, how long is the busing contract?
Yeah, so we're in year 3. We have 2 more option years. So next year is option year 1. The year after that is option year 2.
Okay, are you free to negotiate and cut 2 runs like you're proposing here? Is there any downside to that?
Save the money.
No, I know, but contractually, there's no provision. Because it's their obligation to have the manpower or the person power.
Yeah, so when we started these, the contract has dwindled. We had 32 bus runs. I'm pretty sure it was 32 or 33 in 20, whatever that was when I started doing this, 2005, 2006. So we've slowly dwindled over the years, and if we don't need a run, we try and do it on the
Calendar.
what do you call it, the rebid, and not stick them with 3 extra buses that say Triton Regional School District on the side. But yeah, at any point, we can run them down.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
I'm just curious, I know you met with the Rowley town officials, what their response was to the town's ability to, and I'm just curious about how that conversation went.
So there was no direct information shared that said, we can't afford this, we can't afford this. There was certainly concern, right, shared, and there were 3 of the 5 select board members were there, 2 were absent. So again, there was no gnashing of teeth and saying there's no way this could ever happen, but I certainly walked away with there's considerable concern of how they afford this, certainly. I don't know if...
Yeah, I was just going to say, I got the same thing from the select board response. I think there was considerably more, we can't afford this, coming from the audience members who were not there as actually part of the board. My perception of it was that there was going to be discussion behind the scenes, and I was expecting to hear more tomorrow night from them, which is, I mean, that's not helpful right now. But we do have 2 more meetings between tomorrow night and having to vote a final.
Can I just address something? So when you say discussion behind the scenes, you're talking obviously the town officials and not the school officials.
Correct. Absolutely no closed door discussions here.
Watch the tape, you'll understand what that's about.
Yes, no, I'm assuming that, I mean, Joe was acting chair at that meeting, that he will be having a conversation, and that he's also the DCC representative, that he will be having a conversation with Debbie and, the other administrators on the town official side, the actual, town hall employees who are running that, similar to the way that, Linda would have with Brian, if it was on our side, and bringing kind of a feedback, response, whatever you want to call it, to the meeting tomorrow.
And we do. I mean, we routinely have conversations with the town halls. I know Karen Summit had reached out to Kyle with some questions, and Debbie Egan and Natalie and Amy are CC'd on that. So there's definitely clarifying questions that go back and forth with Rowley, with Salisbury, with Newbury. But I think the balance here is, and I'm not saying anything out of school, right? We've had this argument from the towns, depending on the year. It's hard for one town to look and say, we can't handle cuts because to solve one town's problems, and that's a real challenge, right? So it's for 2 towns to say, yeah, this is totally affordable, but it's going to be really challenging for one town. When there's always one town, that makes it a really hard discussion around the table. So to whoever just made the point, and hopefully there's a hearty discussion tomorrow night.
Yeah, so I mean, looking at these three scenarios, I think what I would like to see is looking forward with scenario number 2. I'm uncomfortable with like an additional $140,000, $150,000 worth of cuts that are totally unspecified, and not having an idea. Like one of the discussions that I sort of always want to have is that kind of risk reward discussion, and it's really hard to know, you know, when you don't know what that looks like, to make a decision based on that. I think we do need to come down a little farther. We've had this discussion in the past about, you know, how the students' experience, our students' experience, who we're advocating for, isn't just about the school, right? It's about what kind of public safety coverage are they getting? It's about, you know, can they safely get to school? Are the roads clear? All those types of things. So, you know, this is an extraordinary year, and it's an extraordinary number for Rowley, who is traditionally the town that's able to afford the least increase based on Prop 2.5 plus new growth. And, you know, I think again, I don't want to go to scenario 3 without risk, you know, knowing kind of what the risk is there, but I think I'm comfortable coming down to scenario 2, and I would like to see us do that moving forward, have the discussion tomorrow night, come back and talk again next Wednesday, and then, you know, we'd be 1 week out from having a vote.
So can we just clarify too, right? These aren't the only options, right? The green, let's assume that, because those are easy adjustments that we can, that we know are a reality without changing actual services. But if the number is 2 million, right? And we come down another 39,000, I think 2 million got Rowley to like 1,001,000 or 2,000 or something like that. So you could say, get Rowley to $999,999, right? So anything in there, right? It doesn't have to be, that's not a suggestion. I'm just saying, these 3 scenarios are not lockstep. We will come back to you. You tell us the number, we'll come back to you with how we believe we can get there next week.
So based on that comment, I would say, you know, I guess the bus runs were something I was already wondering about, given that we're down 5 runs right now, and some buses are in, you know, very overloaded, and some are kind of okay, and we're treading water at this point. That was one I had already wondered about. The additional 50,000, I feel like, I know it's not a comfort spot for Anna and you, but I feel like if that's something that's on the table, then we can talk about it. When I'm thinking about additional things where I would feel comfortable just based on where we are, if we're not providing the services or whatever, saying, yeah, we can step back here and still provide the services, you know, that our students are looking for, that our students need. I don't know where there is another spot where I would say, yes, we could, you know, step back additional to hit a random number, whatever that number is that we pick out of air, and I would be comfortable with that.
I was gonna say, that was my other question is, are there areas that you would say, here's the target, and here are areas we'd love to have you look at? Again, it's tough when we just kind of turned a corner and started moving again.
Sort of along those lines, that scenario 2, we're not really talking about any cuts there to the instruction that we're providing and really the school day services we're providing. When we start moving into those cutting the services, then I think about that we would like to build back the arts program, and all the elementary schools came to us with trying to make that STEM position full-time. And these are services that, at least from my perspective, I'd like to be offering, because they significantly increase the level of instruction we're providing, in my mind. And so to say, okay, we need to make cuts to what we're doing and then start going, okay, in the future we need to add on to that other things is much more challenging. So school buses, we're not running 5, we're saying we're not running 2. That's kind of an increase from where we are. Like, yes, if we're confident, if we're reasonably confident we can get 50,000 in grants or maybe close to that, then great. That's look for other funding sources, and those are things I'm very comfortable with. But
Anybody else? This is a bad year, no matter what we do here. I can't see us gutting any programs and cutting to go to scenario number 3. I mean, I'm not sure what you would cut at, because you would have to cut 371,000 out of the budget, correct?
For scenario 3?
Yeah.
It's an additional 139. So it's
Oh, that one right
everything
there.
from scenario 1 and 2. It's kind of like that midnight sale. You get all of package A plus package
Yeah.
B. If you call before 10.
And I can't come up with an arbitrary number either to say this is the number that we should have without knowing what you're going to cut.
Okay. So, and again, we wouldn't be cutting to an exact number, but what I'm hearing people say is that kind of scenario 2 target, getting into the vicinity of $2 million, is where people feel like comfortable, and we'll keep working on that. And maybe it comes back and next week it's not the 50,000 from curriculum, it's 42 from somewhere else and it's a little higher, and then we have something else. So we'll keep working on that. And
Because if you look at the scenario 2 to scenario 3, you're only talking less than $100,000 there. Yeah, this isn't easy to say what we should cut. Does anybody else have anything? You have the guidance that you need?
I believe we do. We will come back to you again. Next week is the business meeting, so we'll come back to you with not a budget, but a kind of an update here and say, here's not a scenario anymore. Here's what we're saying as the target. And you can give us guidance, and then we'll have 7 days to put it all
Does
together.
anybody else have anything else? Can I have a motion to approve, a motion to adjourn?
It was like, what are we?
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, motion to approve the adjournment.
Any discussion? We need a roll call vote.
Yes.
Paul Mayette,
Yes.
Paul Goldner,
yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Marissa,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Erin,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Everybody have a good night.
So can I just say before we go, so the Personnel Negotiations Subcommittee posted a meeting for 8 o'clock